Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of this show. I'm also a recovering political hack and a recovering lawyer, having spent many years working in politics, including as a speechwriter with stints working in the Clinton White House for a California governor and spending years practicing law in Silicon Valley in the San Francisco Bay Area. You know, in 2010, I discovered the medium of podcasting, and I've been doing this show ever since. And over 10 years of hosting this show, I've had the privilege to talk with top CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of companies and organizations ranging from YPO to EO, Activation Blizzard, Lending Tree, OpenTable, many more. I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help B2B businesses with the strategy and production they need to create a podcast that produces tremendous ROI and connects them to their ideal prospects and referral partner. And I've got a great guest here today. His name is Mike McDerment. He's the co-founder and CEO of FreshBooks, the #1 accounting software in the cloud designed exclusively for freelancers and growing service-based business owners. It was built in 2003. I used it at least 10 years ago, and it is really a game-changing software for anyone who has ever had to send an invoice. In fact, Mike spent 3.5 years growing FreshBooks from his parents' basement. That goes to show the depth of his commitment to this community. Since then, over 24 million people have used FreshBooks to save time billing and collecting billions of dollars. Now, first, before we get into that interview, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25 Media. Look, I don't need to tell you the world has changed over these last many months. We all know that. The question is what to do about it. And in this economy, it's more important than ever to be able to connect and build strong relationships with clients, referral partners, and strategic partners, even when you can't be face-to-face. At Rise 25, we have 20 years experience in the B2B space, connecting and building profitable relationships with clients, referral partners, and strategic partners using a podcast. If you want help connecting with your ideal referral partners and strategic partners, go learn more at Rise 25 Media, or you can email us at support@rise25media.com. All right, Mike, you've got this great story about how you started FreshBooks working out of your parents' basement for a number of years. Take us back, 2003, how you got started.
Yeah, it's a classic tale. I don't know how many other people's, I think it might just be mine. I haven't heard anyone else have the exact same story, but there's themes to it that are evergreen, if you will. I was running a small design firm. I was using Word and Excel to bill my clients. I'd been to business school. I left it in 4th year, but had studied accounting, all this stuff. But I was using Word and Excel to bill my clients. And one day I saved over an invoice by accident. And that was it. I just kind of snapped. I had been starting to teach myself programming, and so I built a little service that I thought my clients might like, which was a place they could go in and view their invoice online. It was really rudimentary, but my clients liked it. And pretty soon after that, we realized other people might like it too. And so we started building it. It was a side project. Took about 14, 16 months to get something that other people could sign up for and use once we, from that moment that I saved over the invoice. And after 2 years of doing it, we had, 10 customers paying us like $9.95 a month each. So my co-founders are a PhD in computer science, an electrical engineer, and myself, and we were making $100 a month for our efforts. So not very exciting, but we stuck with it. Moved into my parents' basement for 3.5 years, and we were 6 people when we left. We're over 400, today. We've got paying customers in over 100 countries. And, are number 2 in America for small business accounting software by revenue. Yeah.
Wow. And what was it, do you think, what was the reason that it didn't take off in those first 2 years?
Okay. So reasonable question. First of all, you have to learn how to, once you build a thing, you have to figure out how to distribute it. And we had some background there, which was great in internet marketing. And so we were using that. And we had thousands of people signing up before too long in a given month. but we didn't have the pricing model correct. The product wasn't finished enough. And so, for these reasons and more, it just didn't turn into many customers. Really, as we started getting the packaging and the pricing better off, we started to benefit along the way. But it was sort of incremental progress over time.
Right. And, it was a cloud-based accounting software back in a time when that was a radical idea. So was it hard early on to convince people that it was safe, it was secure, that they should use something that was not on their local computer, but cloud-based?
It was hard not to start selling it on a CD to somebody, because that was the hard part. So we had people calling up, and we were making like $100 a month from 10 clients. We had people saying, well, for like $4,000, can you put it on a CD and I'll run it on my servers? Wow. And it was, we had to literally sit down and say, is that what we want to do? And we decided not to. We decided to stick with the cloud thing, because yes, this is like 2004, I guess we sort of launched, and building these things on the web was not common practice. People were using desktops and building software for desktops, and we were very early. So that was a challenge. And then to your point of security and privacy, absolutely. Like the conversation back then was, you really got the early adopters, like the people in like IT folks who were like open to it. But then a lot of people were just afraid to put their stuff up in the cloud. And it wasn't even called the cloud back then. Let's go ahead and recall. It was like the web or whatever, the information superhighway. So a fair bit has changed, and things have definitely tilted in our favor and direction over the years.
Right. It's interesting you mentioned this story of someone saying, for $4,000, you send it to me on a CD. Because for so many businesses, these opportunities come along, and it's kind of like a decision point. Do we go this direction? Do we go this direction? And I heard you tell this other story about this opportunity with Wells Fargo that came along, which sounds like that was another big decision point where you had this opportunity to serve Wells Fargo. Tell us that story.
Yeah, that was, we were still in the basement. I don't know if they know this yet, but we were. And so, and this is like probably just before, it was like 2006 timeframe. And we got a phone call one day. And, it was, I think I might have answered the call, which, would have indicated how small we really were. But point being, they were looking for a partner to become their online invoicing solution. They found us. They were interested in working with us. And so for the first time in our history, I went and pitched, to anybody, which meant flying to San Francisco, riding the elevator up 50 floors, glass room. And that was not my everyday. Turns out we won the bake off. So they were talking with, all the usual suspects, plus some people who just build, enterprise software, this kind of thing. Anyhow, we were selected. And that then presented this problem. It was like, do you work with this, this large institution, and the math, it's such a big deal. Like, we were a tiny company. We probably had 2,000 customers or something like this. And staring at this opportunity to get distributed by a bank to, frankly, millions of people and small businesses. And that's the one side. And it's like, back of the envelope, well, if you just get 3% of our customers to use you, it's going to be a great business. And that's very alluring. And then on the other hand, that working with an organization that size is going to slow you down, and they will influence your roadmap, and you're probably going to have to adhere to some arcane standards that we wouldn't worry about being a startup quite the same way at that stage. And so we knew that'd be a bit of an anchor, and I had to go ahead and sort of walk around and have some sleepless nights of which way do we go. And I know we'll probably get into relationships and that kind of thing, but one of my advisors at the time, who had become an angel investor, and he'd founded a very successful company, I called him because he was like my daily call, because I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, how do I be an entrepreneur? Basically, it was my call every day. He was giving me all kind of guidance. So I brought this to him. I was like, Pat, what do we do? And he was like, I don't know, Mike. I'm sure you'll make a great decision. Which was like, oh, that's
like, you're my advisor. Come on.
It's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted somebody to like make the call for me. Anyways, we won the deal. I told them, you're getting the full story here, but I told them, pay us 10 times as much and we'll do it. And they said no. And we said, okay, great. And it was, I think that was my way of saying, I don't really want it. I didn't want to be foolish. If you're going to pay me 10 times, it makes sense. But I'm glad we didn't do it. And I promise you we would not be here today if we had.
Right. And even that decision to go to Wells Fargo, take some cojones to say, pay us 10 times as much and we'll do it.
Well, I think that's, when you sort of don't have anything to lose, right? It's a good place to be. Because I kind of knew I didn't want it, but at some price point, it's like you'd be, it'd be silly not to. So anyhow, I didn't know what they'd say. Frankly, anyways, I think they were surprised by that approach.
Right. Now, if I'm doing my math correctly, you launch in 2004, 3.5 years in the basement, and then eventually you come out of the basement. We're getting to about 2007, 2008, which of course, now we have this big economic downturn. What was that period like for you and for the company?
Well, harrowing, for a variety of reasons. We'd actually, we just had that same angel had decided he was going to help us out a little more because we were doing so well and everyone was excited. And then, the financial crisis hit, and then he had some complications at the time for reasons I won't go into. And so all of a sudden we thought we were going to have some capital that we just didn't have anymore. Mm. And so we had started spending like the capital would be there because we were running lean, and then it's like, oh, we trust this is all going to work out, and then it didn't. And so we really had to peel things back. Anyway, so it was harrowing. We were like, it was pretty existential. We didn't know what was going to go on. And, the punchline is we grew like, I don't know, 180% or something that year. So it was fine. But it was very uncertain. Right. And you just don't know. I will go ahead and say that experience has really helped me because we obviously have just been going through the COVID pandemic, and that is
right.
It's nice to have one of those events under your keel, so to speak.
I want to get to that in a little bit. I want to ask about a few other things before I get to asking about what COVID has been like for you. But you mentioned advisors. To my knowledge, you hadn't built a software company before. So who did you turn to? Did you have coaches? Did you have mentors? Did you have advisors who you could turn to who provided some guidance, especially in these early years?
Yeah, so it was kind of anyone and everyone. I ended up, so we didn't know what we were doing. As I like to say, we built the business first principles on everything. I'd never worked anywhere else. We didn't know how to do software development, product management, branding, marketing. Like I knew a little bit about internet marketing, but that's like a tiny fraction of what marketing is. It's, and I didn't even really appreciate that at the time. So, long story short, my friend's father was a former executive and, had his MBA, and I ended up just starting like with him, like just bringing him I have no idea what I'm doing. He was like, focus, do less stuff, pick a niche, like some really great advice. And, so I often encourage people to go find folks who've like retired and know something, because that stuff just never goes out of style. And so he was big. And then I found my way into, they had this, so we're based in Toronto, Canada. That's where I founded the company, where the headquarters still is. And I got involved with like a kind of an incubator scene there, and they had a raft of advisors in there, and I would go monthly and just suck anybody's brain that I could, like show them the stuff, like get the counsel that I could. 2006, this stuff was pretty new. The internet didn't have all the stuff it had today. Like you can learn how to do and access basically all the stuff you want to be able to do on the internet now. There's, but back then it was massive information arbitrage if you're fundraising, if you're doing product development, if any of these things. So we had to figure out how to do all that stuff. And then, over time in my travels, grew up in a cohort of customers and, proud to, have met, the founders of Zendesk and HubSpot and others when they were much, much smaller. And so those are folks who we were like a peer group growing up. Like, what do you do about this? What do you do about that? And so that's been, those have been some of the peer mentors. So I think I had a host of people, and my line has always been that I like to collect advisors. Because what I got to find was nobody has all the answers you need. But they have little parts of the puzzle. And so I got pretty good at, meeting somebody and realizing you have this area that I might need one day. And I build a relationship with them, and then I'd go back to them. It's served me very well over the years.
What are your secrets for that, for building relationships, particularly, you meet like a Zendesk or a HubSpot or someone like that who's a little bit further ahead of you. And, a lot of my listeners, I think, are curious about this. Like when you have another company or another individual who's a little bit senior to you or further advanced, or their business is doing better, how do you approach a company like that? How do you develop a relationship that leads to some kind of strategic partnership or supporting one another? What are your tips for that?
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts. So back then, those were my peer mentors. Like, I don't know that they were ahead of me. In fact, they were probably, behind. They had sort of business models that had different dynamics and some other things. And they went, pretty heavy on the venture capital route. And we didn't do that for a long time. So no regrets on my side of the house, but yeah, they're certainly they're running public companies now. It's awesome. I'm super proud of them. And they're just great people, by the way. And they've built great management teams, and I encourage everyone to invest behind those folks. So that is great. But some of the other folks, you get introduced to, you go to these incubator things. And so I had the former CFO of AT&T, right, showing up to he'd fly in monthly from wherever he was to help these companies, because they'd assembled this group of basically retired executives who were doing board time and trying to help companies. And I think it was a really good initiative. But so those are the people that, I met through that incubator thing. And the job then is, you still need to build rapport with them, because you're going to want to get a hold of them, between here and next month or whatever it is. And so
you want them to respond when you reach out or send an email or text or whatever.
100%. And they're doing it for the love of it. Right. So it's can't buy their love at this point. It's, it's not what it's about. And so anyways, the feedback I'd have with any of these things is, first, figure out if this is somebody you want to spend time with. I think it's really important. Somebody may have all the knowledge. I have passed on wanting to spend time with a lot of people because I just felt like there probably wasn't a values fit at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. Some people have been really successful, but it didn't feel like it had a lot of depth to me in some cases, or I just didn't feel like it had jived. And so, not 100% of people do I try and glom myself onto. But then, when I feel like there's some kind of connection there, and I think that's, there's some kind of rapport. And I don't know what goes on with building the immediate rapport, but normally the guidance I give to people is kind of lay yourself bare, right? Just be honest. Don't try to put an air on that you have all the answers and know everything. It's more this is what we're doing. These are the 10 things I don't know how to do, right? And my experience has been that, people who have experience and who, are there to mentor or what have you, if they meet somebody who's kind of honest and true and, is respectful of their time, not being geez, can you tell me this? And now can you tell me that? And all the rest of it, they can't help but want to help you, right? If you show them, I don't know how to think about marketing. It's okay, let me try and explain that to you to help you. And so, I just think laying yourself bare and being forthright and respectful, and then there'd be some follow-up, but just little things, so they know that if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And then they're okay, this guy said he'd get in touch with me next week, and he did, and he's asking me to get on a call, but he's also said let me share some stuff with you that helped me since the last call, so they can see the effect. I don't know, I'm kind of running on, but I think it's a lot of little things. But about rapport, about being a values fit, and then I think just really laying yourself bare, because I think that's, and sometimes that means people will be listen, I don't know how to help you, but I can steer you to someone who is, and that saves everybody time. If there's no crossover and it's not a fit, you want to figure that out up front.
What has it been like? You've built this business now, has 400 plus people working for it. What has it been like switching into that other role where you now, I'm sure, had people who approach you to get advice from you?
Well, it's interesting because, we started some time ago now, over a decade ago, and Toronto apparently hired more people in technology in the last year than Silicon Valley did, which is pretty wild. But when we started out, there was really no ecosystem there. And we were pushing it. And so I went to this incubator that, believe it or not, was government funded. Okay. So the government doesn't do anything. Well, I would beg to differ. And then I ended up playing a role in choosing to spend time helping to build other sort of up and coming people in the community, because it turns out I was 10 years down the road. I'd learned some things. I had some connections. So fundraising, marketing, product, managing your board, whatever it is, these are very hard things. And so I started spending time one-on-one with folks, and that was my way of giving back. With my personal, ambition for Toronto is that it really starts to, compete on the global scale. And I think we really are starting to. Anyhow, so that was that. And it can be very rewarding, when you really help somebody set them up so they can go and make the difference they need to or want to in their business. And playing a role in that is very gratifying.
I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned raising money, and you've had kind of like a mixed relationship towards that. For many years, you were opposed to it. It sounds like you got some angel funding, but you were opposed to venture capital. But you did face a point, I think it was around 2014 or so, where you decided, we need to completely rewrite the software. And so you decided that you needed to raise some money. How did that change the company, and particularly from a management standpoint? I know you had to rewrite the software, but from a management standpoint, you've got a board, you've got other, VC funds that are obviously wanting a return at some point. How did it change, and did it change your expectations since you were so opposed to it for many years? Did your worst fears come true, or was it better than you thought it would be?
It's a great question. So yeah, we went over a decade without raising capital. I took a lot of phone calls. I just knew that I didn't understand VCs and their whole, sort of business, frankly. And so that sort of imbalance of information, I was like, my big concern was I just don't want to, it's not that I don't want investors. It's not that I don't want capital. It's not that I can't work with people, but I was concerned of managing the business to a place where, customer service would not be important anymore. And the board would be like, outsource this somewhere else where it's cheaper. And I'm like, it's the heart of the company. Like we serve people. That's what we're known for. I didn't want to ever, sort of lead the company to a place where I felt like I had lost stewardship of it, if that makes sense, and to do what I felt were the right things. And so, the punchline is you go along for a little while and you de-risk the market. Oh, people want to buy this stuff. Oh, this is the product they want. And then you wind up with the team. And the real reason, the last one for me was an executive team. And once I found my first executive, I thought I had found some before, but once I found the kind of real one, that was it. I was like, oh, now the only problem we have is capital. We should go get some. And so we went and raised money. In fairness to those investors, I did not know we were going to rewrite the software before we raised the capital. I would have told
interesting. Them. Okay, so that wasn't the driving motivation then. No,
but what's interesting is once you have a lot of capital, it's like, oh, I can think differently. I'm not which I think can be on one hand dangerous, but on the one hand really good, because you can go take on some big problems you wouldn't have otherwise and have some more ambition around it. And so that was kind of how that went down. So we had the capital, and then we're like, hey, we're thinking of doing this, and they were really excited about it. So that was cool. So they were bought in. It was not, but it was not planned, and I credit the board, and they were all very savvy sort of long-term investors, and had seen enough things from enough companies to know that, that this was manageable, and they were very supportive and are to this day.
Yeah. It's been 17 years since you launched the business, which is kind of an eternity for tech CEOs, right? What keeps you motivated and driving forward and still doing it all these years?
Yeah, I think, what do you want in like a career or something? It's like challenge and personal growth. And so, there's ample challenge. Some days, you get periods where it's like too much, right? You go a quarter or a couple quarters where you're kind of redlining or whatever. And other periods, as you get to a different scale or something like that in the business, and your role feels very different, that can feel uncomfortable and different. And maybe, I'm not so sure about some of this stuff anymore. But at the heart of it for me is really the spirit and the mission around FreshBooks, which is really around serving people and serving others. And we happen to serve small business owners who, are about the most no, I shouldn't say it like that, but, one of the more underserved markets in the world. And, knowing that we build a piece of software that suits their needs so well, and how, grateful they are. You get on the phone with our customers, do customer service. They love the software. and we help them a lot. And so that feels good. And then, the culture and the way we do service and build software at FreshBooks is something that I think the world needs more of. I have this belief that, businesses are a force of good. I think there's a lot of people who want to say businesses are evil. I really believe that I'm sure there are businesses who've done evil things, just like there are people who've done evil things. But, I really believe business is a source of good. And so for me, FreshBooks is a heck of a platform to go do more good in the world. And as we grow, we can affect, more positive change. And that's exciting for me. And there's a whole bunch of ways that we can go and live that more and more and on a bigger scale.
So we're recording this in the end of September 2020, and the COVID pandemic has been going on for about 6 months now. You mentioned earlier that the 2008 downturn really kind of helped to prepare you for what happened this year. What has the last 6 months been like for you and for the company?
Yeah, not unlike 2008. It's like, you got to plan for the worst. We really don't know what's going to happen here. And then you get some more, you make a plan, and the plan is pretty scary, right? It's like, okay, well, here's what we got to do to make sure. The first job when you're managing an organization is to ensure it survives and thrives, right? And so we had to look at things through the lens of, what if things go terribly wrong? Now, the good news was we had 2008 to draw on, so we kind of, and interestingly, things wound up being pretty similar for all intents and purposes. So we use that as a model. And then we built that plan, and we reset our forecasts, and then we started moving forward and seeing what happened. And things looked a little ugly for a few weeks. People kind of slowed down signing up. And then, for a few weeks further than that, there was just kind of a run of people, literally canceling their accounts. They probably should have done it a long time ago, and they're just getting around to it now. Some cases it was people going out of business, but then that kind of stopped, and we've just been really growing since then. So it's been a good exercise in hey, you got to adjust to the the new reality, and what do you do? But by and large, things have been very, very positive for us. So we are very, very fortunate.
Yeah. The final question, or second to last question, when do you see yourself moving on?
It's interesting, right? So why do you ask that question?
Well, just because I was curious about it. Not that I expected that you'd move on or anything, but just you just seem like you have a lot of interests, and I don't know. It's been a long time. 17 years at one company is long for in any career.
Yeah, I think this is where I'm going to give you a couple thoughts on this, because I think it's an interesting topic, and I think the world, especially the tech world, is really biased in a whole bunch of different ways. It's like success is, you build a little thing, you get it funded, you run it for a couple of years, you sell it to somebody, you move on, you do it again, right? And that's like very Silicon Valley or whatever it is. And I'll go ahead and say, if your company has no soul and you're not really serving anyone, I get why you'd want to go ahead and do that. But in a world where, you're bringing service to the world, you're taking care of people who, are not as well served as they were before you existed. You have a company culture that's, frankly, we win all these awards for being the best place to work, great places to work. We're not in the Fortune 500 category, so we do less than 1,000 employees. But, there's a lot going on there that's hard to sustain. And so I guess, and I know it's tiresome to quote Steve Jobs or whatever, but he had my favorite thing from him is, there's some quote along the lines of, those people who build a company and sell it, and, they call themselves entrepreneurs. Well, they suck. That's not entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is gutting it out and going through the really hard stuff and kind of getting to the other side, where you need to find, in my lifetime, I'm kind of on my second one, and then there'll be a third and probably a fourth. You have to find whole new, you have to move platforms. So we've seen move to the web, we've seen, mobile come along, and, you basically have to reinvent the future of the company a few times. That's hard to do.
Yeah. It's almost like multiple companies in a sense, if you look at the different phases.
That's right. And so I think, I think those are challenges that are worthy challenges. When I think about working in other places or starting other things, I have a hard time competing with the mission of FreshBooks and how we serve people. It just kind of brings me back. It's like, it doesn't compare. I've co-founded another company. I'm the chair of that one. I think it's a great company. I'm very excited about it. At the same time, I feel like our customers are the best customers in the world, and it's like, why wouldn't I keep doing this? So, it's a great privilege to be able to do it. We have an incredible team around now that does. But yeah, I just love to shift the bias away. Like, I think there are a lot of entrepreneurs or like founders now who want to be done with whatever company they're building in 3, 5, 7 years, and to me, it's like, that's just backwards. Can you run it for longer than that? And when I look at my friends at HubSpot, I look at my friend at Zendesk, like these are people who are still there, they're over a decade in too, right? So, what's wrong with that? I can't see anything wrong with that. I think it's tremendous. So,
right.
Anyway, so I'd like to flip the narrative on that. That's why I asked. Yeah.
Yeah, fair. So to wrap things up, last question. Let's pretend we're at an awards banquet, like the Oscars or the Emmys. You, Mike, are receiving an award for lifetime achievement for everything you've done up until this point. And what we want to know is, who are the thanks? Who are the friends? Who are the people that you thank? Who are the colleagues? Who are the friends? Who are the mentors? Who are the peers? Who are the business partners? Who are the advisors? Who would you acknowledge?
Yeah, in depending how much time I have, I certainly go to the parents. Just for sort of the formative stuff. My co-founders, I'm going to do the quick long list. You've got the mentors who helped me kind of get there. The customers who believed in us, and the team, I think, are some of the big ones. And then obviously we've had people support us now, kind of raising capital over the past few years. So also important to helping us achieve our potential. But it's all these things. But first on the list for sure would be my folks. Great.
All right, Mike. FreshBooks is the name of the company. FreshBooks.com. Anywhere else people can go to learn more about you?
I think that's probably the best place. You can find me personally at Mike McDerment on Twitter or at FreshBooks. But listen, thanks for having me, John. And I hope folks listening at home got a thing or two from this.
Well, great. Yeah, it's great stuff. I mean, I remember using FreshBooks years ago when I was just starting out in entrepreneurship, and it made a big difference for me. And you make a big difference for many, many people out there. So thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution.
Revolution.
And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.